Hey everybody! Today we'll be talking about Joe KUBERT, a master of all aspects of comic art, including penciling, inking, coloring, and writing. This is why, in this video, we've called him the Auteur. When most comics are drawn, the penciler, inker, and colorist are traditionally different artists. This can create somewhat of a clash regarding the penciler's intentions of what is supposed to be occurring in each frame. Instead of having movement and shadow dictated by one mind, others are intervening with their interpretation. Before the digital age, the pencils would be erased after being inked. Because KUBERT was usually doing both the pencils and inks, he was able to fully realize the intentions he laid out in his original pencils. His ideas came to full fruition, rather than becoming bits of eraser dust in a garbage can. Colors and other types of shading are applied after the inks. Depending on the intended style, the colorist can have a lot to do, or very little. When we look at some of the most exceptional artists that use pencil and ink, the colors used in their books are, quite often, very minimalistic. They are able to use a variety of line techniques to provide depth, tone, and shadow. When done well, this greatly reduces the reliance on the colorist to assist the penciler and inker with the mood and drama occurring on the page. Since the penciler is essentially deciding on the entire placement of figures and what they are doing in the context of the story, it is important for there to be no doubt as to what they are trying to convey. When the original art can stand on its own, it lays down a concrete foundation for the colors or gray tones to be applied afterwards. What the artist visualizes in their imagination becomes uncompromisingly represented on the page. Before there's color of any type, we are essentially looking at lines and shapes on a page in a black and white space. At their best, these lines and shapes are able to represent figures and objects of potentially anything the imagination can conceive. At their worst, they can make the image appear flat, two-dimensional, and without a sense of tactile mass. Many of the books Joe KUBERT worked on were colored in their final forms, but today we'll be showing his art in grayscale without color, so you can get a better sense of just how much KUBERT could express in his art with just the contours. When looking at KUBERT's art, it's immediately clear that he had an excellent sense of line weight. While stroking his brush or pen across the page, KUBERT would press down to make the line thicker, and then lift it, making the line taper into a point. KUBERT used these types of lines to show the depth of his figures underneath the shadows. This gave his figures a feeling of realistic dimension. In order to denote fast movement, KUBERT would draw long lines in uniform with one another. These are commonly known as speed lines. KUBERT didn't just use speed lines in the space surrounding his figures, he would also use them directly on them to further emphasize their motion. KUBERT also had no fear of brushing entire objects or body parts black to show them being completely cast in shadow. He would do this when taking into account how the eye would see something in life. For example, if a human face is in shadow, it is not realistic to be able to see their eyes and pupils. Combined with his other techniques, this makes all of his pages and panels have at least one point of absolute light and one of absolute shadow. The techniques he employs in between the light and pure shadow show the gradient in transition from one to the other. Another aspect of KUBERT that makes his art stand out was his understanding of space in three-dimensional figures. When looking at his pencils, you can see that he clearly mapped out his characters, objects, and structures in loose, segmented shapes. This allowed him to proportion everything correctly in a way that made perfect sense visually, while still capturing the intense movement and drama he projected from his imagination. This is why the movement and action on his pages feels so visceral and grounded. Even in KUBERT's pages of people standing and talking, there's something very special going on artistically. There's a lifelike elasticity to the characters' faces, which truly allows us to read their emotions. KUBERT posed them and made them gesture in ways that correspond with the story. Even if you look at his panels without any text, you can still understand how the characters are feeling. KUBERT used his frames as if they were a camera lens, drawing close-ups of his characters' faces in extreme detail so that they are the element of focus, with much less detail on everything in the background. It's as if he is defocusing the lens on his camera to only make what is in the foreground sharp, and thus the focal point for the reader's eyes. All of these facets gave KUBERT's art an incredible amount of realism and weight that isn't always seen in comics. Arguably, art of KUBERT's magnitude could have been sent to the printers without ever seeing or needing a colorist. Luckily for us, his work is immortalized in print. Whether it's the grizzled soldiers of Sergeant Rock or the vine-swinging Tarzan, KUBERT's art has influenced and continues to influence many artists. Whether you're a comic book reader or an artist, you can't help look at his images and wonder, how was someone able to draw like this? Thanks for watching Shapes on a Page.